Imagine, for just a minute, spending the holidays with 60 other people.
Oh, wow. 60.
Yeah, 60. And not just for a quick weekend getaway, not for a 2-hour dinner party.
Right.
We are talking about an extended period of time living under the exact same roof.
That is a lot of people in one house.
Exactly. You're sharing every single meal, coordinating every single household chore, and spending every waking moment navigating the physical and, well, the emotional space of 60 completely distinct personalities.
Yeah, I can already feel my stress levels rising just thinking about it.
Right. So what are the odds in that highly specific scenario that absolutely no one loses their temper?
Practically zero.
Right. What are the chances that over the course of nearly a year, nobody sulks in a corner, nobody, argues over how the dishes are being washed, and everyone just exists in this state of pure, uninterrupted harmony?
I mean, if we look at human nature as it currently operates, the statistical probability of that happening is essentially zero. You introduce fatigue, different opinions, or just like a misplaced towel, and the social fabric usually frays. Someone is going to snap. It's just how we are wired.
That is my exact thought. It sounds like a completely impossible scenario. But today, we are taking a deep dive into a document that claims this exact situation didn't just happen, but that it actually successfully proves a completely new way for human beings to exist together.
Yeah, it's a really wild claim.
It really is. We are examining a 2010 text written by a figure named Feng, and it details this highly radical, immensely specific social and spiritual experiment called Lifechanyuan, or what the community itself calls the second home.
Which is now known as the new oasis for life, right?
Yes, exactly. So what are we really trying to figure out here today?
Well, our mission for today's deep dive is to examine the architecture of this modern utopian claim.
Okay.
By unpacking this text, we are looking at what this specific community believes is the absolute ultimate formula for human happiness and societal perfection.
So we're looking at their blueprint?
Exactly. We are going to look strictly at the blueprint they have provided. The goal isn't to judge it or say it's good or bad, but just to genuinely understand the mechanics of how the author claims to have engineered a society without any conflict.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the claims made in the opening of this text set a very, very high bar.
Oh, they really do.
The document hinges on this 10-month practice period that culminated in the 2010 Spring Festival.
Right, the Spring Festival.
Yeah. According to Feng, nearly 60 people lived together in this second home, and the results were supposedly flawless.
Flawless, that's a strong word.
It is, and the text uses this incredibly vibrant vocabulary to describe the atmosphere. It lists words like joy, pleasure, freedom, happiness, auspiciousness, and elegance.
Elegance is an interesting one for a shared living space.
I know, right? And it explicitly states, let me quote this, "No one has lost temper, no one feels unhappy, no one feels unpleasant, and no one feels unsatisfied."
I mean, that is a sweeping declaration of total psychological and social victory.
Yep.
It leaves absolutely no room for error or, just having a bad day.
And as I read that, my immediate instinct is to view it through the lens of basic human behavior.
Sure.
You look at any new relationship, or even a highly curated month-long corporate retreat.
Oh, yeah, the retreat vibes.
Right. There is always a honeymoon phase. When people know they are part of a new social experiment, they are on their best behavior.
The adrenaline is pumping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The adrenaline is pumping. Everybody wants it to work. So my initial pushback to the text is, is 10 months really long enough to declare that human nature has been permanently altered? Or is the community just riding the temporary high of a completely novel environment?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the text itself approaches that exact skepticism.
Oh, really? They actually address it?
Yeah, they do. According to the author, this wasn't just a matter of people utilizing good manners or collectively, biting their tongues for 10 months.
Because if you just repress anger for 10 months, eventually you're going to explode.
Exactly. If you're just repressing it, the dam breaks eventually. But the document frames this 10-month success as and this is a, quote, great leap in mankind's thinking and an entirely brand new pattern of life.
A great leap.
Wow. Yeah. To the author, this isn't a temporary behavioral adjustment where people are just trying really hard to be nice. It is presented as physical proof that their underlying theories of human existence have fundamentally rewired the participants.
Rewired them.
Yes. They believe they have found the mechanism to bypass human suffering entirely.
But to achieve that kind of rewiring, the text reveals They didn't just tweak a few local laws or, hold weekly group therapy
Yeah,
sessions.
not at all.
They entirely dismantled the foundational structures of human society. Because logically, you can't completely change human behavior if people are still playing by the old rules.
Right. If the game is the same, the behavior will be the same.
Exactly.
Precisely. To eliminate the friction, you have to eliminate the structures that actually create the friction in the first place. And that brings us to what the text calls the 8 ideals.
The 8 ideals.
Yeah. This is where the structural redesign of the second home becomes radically apparent.
And it is radical.
Very. To achieve this state where no one is unhappy, they didn't just encourage people to share their belongings.
No, it goes way further.
They instituted the complete disintegration of marriage, the dissolution of the traditional family unit, and the total elimination of private ownership.
I really want to pause on that because that is just a massive structural shift.
It's tearing it all down to the studs.
Yeah, the complete disintegration of marriage and family. They are looking at the foundational building blocks of practically every society on Earth, the nuclear family and private property, and identifying them as the root causes of all human conflict.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, the ideological synthesis happening within these 8 ideals is highly complex. Well, the author doesn't rely on just one school of thought. The
Ah.
text takes the classic communist economic ideal, from each according to his ability and to each according to his need,
Right.
and places it right alongside deeply ancient spiritual doctrines.
That's quite a mix.
It is. It claims to realize Jesus Christ's prediction of a kingdom without marriage and simultaneously claims to fulfill Lao Tzu's philosophical ideal of Tao modeling itself after nature.
I mean, it's an absolute ideological mashup.
That's a good way to put it.
You have Karl Marx, Jesus, and Lao Tzu all being channeled into the operational guidelines of this one specific social experiment in 2010.
Yeah.
And the text describes the outcome with this beautiful, almost poetic paradox. It says the ideal state is everyone having nothing and yet possessing everything.
And that paradox is the absolute crux of their economic and social theory.
Having nothing but possessing everything.
Right. In their framework, by owning nothing individually, the friction of jealousy, theft, and hoarding is theoretically neutralized.
Like there's nothing to steal.
Exactly. If you don't own the apple tree in the yard, you don't have to build a fence around it.
Right.
You don't have to experience the anxiety of protecting it from your neighbor, and you don't feel the pride of having more apples than someone else. You just eat an apple when you are hungry because the tree belongs to the collective.
And the text gives very vivid, specific social metrics for what this looks like when it is actually functioning correctly, right?
Yes, it does.
The metrics of success they use are so fascinating because they aren't about, like, agricultural yield or economic growth.
Right, it's not a spreadsheet.
No. The text claims they have realized a society where no one is pocketing anything found on the ground and no one is bolting the door at night.
Which implies a total lack of fear.
Exactly. And there's this one deeply evocative phrase describing the community members. It says, everyone displays their own special skills, like 8 Chinese immortals crossing the sea.
Oh, that specific metaphor is incredibly revealing regarding how they view the individual within the collective.
Break that down for me. What does that mean?
Well, in Chinese mythology, the 8 immortals are a group of legendary beings. And when they needed to cross the ocean, they didn't just build one massive ship and all row together in unison.
Okay.
Instead, each immortal used their own unique magical tool or ability to cross the water. One used a gourd, another used a fan, another used a sword.
Oh, wow. So it's actually the complete opposite of everyone becoming identical.
Exactly. The text is using this cultural touchstone to imply that in the second home, collective living doesn't mean everyone becomes a uniform gray cog in a machine.
Right.
Rather, the author argues that the elimination of private property and the burden of the nuclear family actually frees every single person to fully manifest their unique talents.
Because they aren't worried about paying rent.
Yes. Without the stress of survival economics, you can use your specific magic to contribute to the whole.
Okay, I understand the economic argument they're making there, but I really struggle to buy that simply abolishing marriage and family naturally cures the human heart of jealousy.
It's a tough sell.
Let's try a thought experiment. Imagine taking away the boundaries of your family unit.
Okay.
The idea of my spouse or my child is just gone. The text seems to suggest that by removing those specific exclusive bonds, you eliminate possessiveness.
Right?
But does removing the label of a relationship genuinely cure the biological instinct to claim someone as your own? It feels like a massive leap to assume that just because you abolish the institution of marriage, the human emotion of jealousy just evaporates.
Well, this raises an important question because abolishing these deeply ingrained structures by mandate is virtually impossible unless the people involved actively desire to live this way.
Exactly, you can't force it.
You can't. You can't just forcefully take away someone's property and dissolve their marriage and expect them to smile, leave their doors unlocked, and never feel a single pang of jealousy.
Right, people would rebel.
If it's forced, it breeds resentment, not harmony. So, to make this work, you need a completely internalized psychological operating system to make the members willingly embrace the loss of the individual self.
Which leads right into the next major pillar of the text, because they do actually provide a new psychological framework.
They do.
The document transitions into what it calls the 9 values. And the core philosophy driving these values is stated so plainly it actually took me aback.
What does it say?
The text says, all crises faced by man can be solved if the crisis of man's soul is solved.
Wow, it's a complete rejection of external systemic solutions.
Yeah.
The text isn't arguing that the crisis of humanity is political or economic or technological. It is entirely spiritual.
Entirely.
In this framework, the soul is the only battlefield that truly matters. If you fix the internal landscape, the external landscape like society, economics, relationships naturally falls into perfect order.
Here's where it gets really interesting, especially regarding our earlier question about human possessiveness.
Okay.
The text takes a fiercely definitive stance on traditional human relationships. It literally defines marriage and family as an endless sea of suffering.
An endless sea of suffering.
Yes. And it promises that if you step outside of the bounds of marriage and family, you are moving far away from the sea of tribulation.
I mean, think about the psychological framing the author is employing there. In most cultures, the traditional family is positioned as a haven in a heartless world.
Right, it's your safe harbor.
But this text flips that entirely. It positions the nuclear family as the very source of the heartbreak.
Yeah.
The possessiveness, the expectations, the financial strain of supporting a closed unit, the grief of loss, they view the family as a trap that anchors you to suffering.
So what is the alternative they offer then?
The text posits that collective life is the best venue for self-refinery and self-cultivation.
It's treating communal living not just as an economic strategy, but almost as a spiritual gym.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Living collectively with 60 people isn't framed as a convenience. It is a rigorous, mandatory spiritual practice.
Oh, I see.
The daily friction of living with that many individuals, the differing opinions, the shared spaces, that acts as the sandpaper that smooths out the ego.
Wow.
And what's incredibly unique is how the text validates this practice. The author explicitly states that the teachings of Jesus Christ, Buddha Sakyamuni, Celestial Lao Tzu, and Prophet Muhammad are all fundamentally correct.
It reads like a unified field theory of religion.
Yes.
They're taking the greatest hits of world theology and putting them under one massive umbrella, which the text calls the way of the greatest creator.
By validating all these major religious figures, the author creates an incredibly wide, inclusive net.
Right, they aren't alienating anyone.
Exactly. But then the text immediately funnels all that cosmic historical authority directly into the highly specific lifestyle of the second home. The core of all this spiritual synthesis, the text claims, is the sublimation of soul and the perfection of consciousness. You use the collective environment to essentially burn away the flawed human ego.
I am trying to visualize how this actually functions on a practical level, though.
Well, right, the day-to-day.
Yeah. The text mentions that members need to uphold the 800 values for new era human being.
800 values.
800. That isn't a simple 10 commandments. That is a highly detailed, incredibly dense terms of service agreement you have to fully internalize to make this utopia function.
It's massive.
It is. Instead of viewing it as a rule book, it feels more like a psychological immune system.
How do you mean?
Well, if you have 800 internalized values, they are constantly working in the background to attack a jealous thought or a selfish impulse before it can even form into an actual argument.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to phrase it.
But there is one phrase regarding how this community operates that really requires some untangling for me.
What's that?
The author writes that a holographic theory and holographic management mechanism conforms most to human character and nature.
Ah, yes, the holographic management.
What does it actually mean for a management style to be holographic?
So, to understand that, we have to look at how a literal hologram functions compared to a standard photograph. If you take a photograph of a landscape and cut it in half, you lose half the picture.
Right, you just have the left side or the right side.
Exactly. But if you fracture a holographic plate, every single tiny shard still holds the information of the entire complete image. The whole is encoded into every single piece.
Okay, so applying that to a group of 60 people.
Yeah.
What does a holographic management mechanism look like on, say, a random Tuesday afternoon when chores need to be done?
Right. Well, in a traditional top-down management system, like a standard workplace or even a traditional family, if a pipe bursts, a worker has to call a supervisor,
Right.
who then calls a manager, who then coordinates a plumber. It requires a hierarchy to enforce action.
That makes sense.
But a holographic management mechanism implies society where there is no external boss delegating tasks or enforcing rules.
None at all.
None. Instead, the entire philosophy, all 800 values, all the goals of the community, is fully encoded into every single individual.
So if a person walks into the kitchen and sees a massive pile of dirty dishes, they don't need a chore chart or a manager to tell them to clean it.
Right.
Because the entire ethos of the community is already inside them, they recognize the need of the whole and just do the dishes.
Exactly. The individual and the collective become indistinguishable in their goals. They govern themselves perfectly because the health of the entire community is reflected within the individual's own mind.
Wow.
There is no need for external management when internal management is absolute. That is why they claim they can leave their doors unlocked and not fight over resources.
Well, logically, following the text's argument, if you have the perfect structural ideals, you have this perfect unified religion, and you have this incredibly efficient holographic management system where everyone governs themselves,
Right.
you would think the hardest part of building a utopia is over.
You'd think so, yeah.
You've successfully engineered the perfect society. You can finally sit back, relax, and enjoy the peace you've created.
But that's not what happens.
No. Right at this point, the text takes an incredibly sharp, almost jarring turn regarding the future. It reveals an immense, crushing pressure placed on the individuals living inside this supposedly perfect Eden.
It is a profound reality check nestled right within the document.
Yeah.
The author, Xu Feng, writes that people who have successfully integrated into the second home are Chanyuan celestials.
Which implies a divine, highly elevated, almost angelic status. They aren't just regular people anymore.
Correct. They have supposedly sublimated their souls. Yet, right after declaring this massive victory of human harmony and assigning them the celestial status, the author issues a stark, highly grounded warning to the community.
What does he say?
He writes, "It is difficult to start a business, but more difficult to safeguard what one has already accomplished."
It is such an intense tonal shift.
It really is.
The document literally calls their community the Garden of Eden. But then, just a few lines later, it describes this Eden as being extremely weak.
Extremely weak.
Yes. It explicitly states that the community cannot stand the test of huge rainstorms and waves, and warns that if anyone slacks off, it is very likely the garden will vanish into thin air.
I mean, it exposes the profound inherent vulnerability of this utopian construct.
Absolutely.
You would naturally assume that a perfect society, one guided by universal truth and 800 core values, would be incredibly resilient.
Built like a fortress.
Exactly. You would think it's built like a fortress.
Yeah.
But the text freely admits it is incredibly fragile. It is more like a delicate house of cards.
Yeah.
The flawless harmony they supposedly achieved over those 10 months wasn't a permanent, effortless biological mutation. It was a highly precarious balance that requires exhaustive, constant, unyielding maintenance from every single member.
And this highlights a massive paradox in the text. The document tells us that the outside world, the traditional world of marriage and property, is a sea of tribulation. It is defined by suffering. But then it describes the reality of living inside this perfect utopia, this place of alleged absolute freedom and joy, by saying, it is not time yet to lie down and relax, not yet time to slacken our will and enjoy comfort and ease.
Wow.
It demands that every single person must conduct their self-cultivation as if they're walking on tightrope and thin ice.
Walking on tightrope and thin ice, I mean, those are metaphors of extreme life or death anxiety.
Yes.
If you lose your focus for 1 second on a tightrope, you fall.
So my question, based purely on the text, is this.
Okay.
If you can never, ever relax, if you can never enjoy a moment of uncalculated comfort, and you have to meticulously monitor your every single word, action, idea, and will just to keep the community from vanishing into thin air, is that actually utopia? Or is it just a different incredibly high-stakes flavor of stress.
That's a great question.
It reads like you've traded the mundane stress of paying a mortgage and arguing with a spouse for the existential stress of having to achieve absolute spiritual perfection every single second of the day.
And that is the ultimate tension driving the second home.
Yeah.
The text makes it clear that the stakes of this tightrope walk are not just about maintaining a pleasant household or being a good roommate.
It's bigger than that.
Much bigger. It is framed as an existential cosmic mission.
Wow.
The author explains that by strictly following what they call the roadmap of the guide, the true goal of this relentless discipline is to pay back all our debts and accumulate the treasures and wealth for ourselves to go to the heavenly kingdom.
So it's deeply transactional.
Very.
You are enduring the immense, unrelenting pressure of the tightrope right now in order to buy your way into heaven later.
Yes. The collective living, the loss of private property, the total abolition of the family. The text frames these not just as interesting social quirks.
Right.
They are the strict, mandatory currency required to pay off spiritual debt.
Wow.
If you slip up on the thin ice, if you let one jealous thought about an apple tree enter your mind, you aren't just disrupting the Tuesday chore schedule.
Oh.
In this framework, you are jeopardizing your eternal soul and threatening the structural integrity of the entire celestial community. Every single thought has cosmic weight.
Every thought. That is just wow. So what does this all mean?
Well, it's a lot to take in.
It is. When we zoom out and look at this 2010 blueprint from Shufeng, the second home experiment shows us the unimaginable lengths to which human beings will go to architect a perfect society.
Absolutely.
We are looking at a community that attempted to synthesize ancient global philosophies, totally abolish foundational human norms like the nuclear family, and demand a level of internal discipline that requires policing your own mind 24 hours a day.
And while the specific radical practices of the second home might seem completely disconnected from your own daily routine, the core warning delivered at the end of this text touches on a deeply universal truth.
How so?
Well, the author writes, understanding principles is one thing, but putting them into practice in our daily production and life is quite another thing.
Right, knowing the rules of the game isn't the same as actually playing it.
Exactly. The text acutely points out that if you don't make a conscious, exhaustive effort in your words, actions, and ideas, then all the brilliant philosophy you have memorized is just useless pet phrases.
Useless pet phrases.
Yeah. Whether you are trying to build a radical, property-free, holographic utopia, or you are simply trying to be a slightly more patient person in your own traditional family, knowledge without rigorous, practiced action is entirely empty.
Which brings us right back to the scenario we started with. Think again about that hypothetical holiday with 60 people.
Right.
The text claims they achieved absolute perfect harmony, but it also admits that doing so required every single person to walk on a razor's edge, constantly monitoring their internal landscape.
A constant tightrope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it leaves you with a really fascinating, lingering question to ponder long after we wrap up this deep dive today.
What's that?
If building a perfect society requires human beings to relentlessly police their every single thought, acting as though they are walking on a tightrope over a canyon. Walking on a tightrope over a canyon. Is true harmony something that can actually be engineered? Or is the very act of trying to force human perfection what makes these utopias so inherently fragile?